When we speak about entities such as ghosts or poltergeists, what kinds of creatures are these really? Even when we speak about creatures that we consider to be quite flesh and blood, like Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster, could we sometimes be misidentifying what we see? Please do not believe that I am negating the existence of flesh and blood creatures like Bigfoot, or the existence of life beyond the grave like ghosts. What I am doing is presenting a seldom researched type of life form that exists on planet Earth. Inorganic beings are sentient awareness without biological corporealness. A sentient awareness that has the possibility of focused attention, and is encased in an energetic structure that is not biological. Some practitioners of the occult realized long ago that we share the Earth with a type of life that modern science believes to be completely impossible. These inorganic beings share this Earth with us and are far more aware of us than we are of them. While there seems to be a large chasm between us, that is, they do seem to exist within their own separate universe, they can nevertheless come through this thin membrane that separates our two worlds, and interact with us. These aware beings, that exist without physical clothing, often get a bad rap. The reason for this is that their sustenance can sometimes make them rather dangerous company. They need to consume just like we do, but while we consume our energy by ingesting other biological life forms for the most part, they consume their energy directly, that is, they consume their energy in raw energetic form. While most can survive quite easily on the energetic food supplied by the Earth itself, some do covet, or require, the extra power that they can consume from living organic entities. Specifically, they crave emotional energy. Human beings generate great amounts of emotional force, and this emotional force is highly coveted by them, because unlike us they cannot create this form of intensity themselves. While they seem almost inert energetically, during most of their life cycle, we organic beings shine like bright lights compared to them. Human beings are of course a great source of this energy, because of our unstable emotional demeanor. Fear and terror are what attract these creatures the most, but any large emotional output is sufficient to attract their attention. While most of these creatures go about their business without much desire to interact with humanity at all, there are some that specialize in feeding off of the emotional energy that they can get from us. They can't, to my knowledge, hurt a human being directly, but they can nevertheless scare one to death through the manipulation of his or her awareness. This is a tricky situation really, because while they might not be able to actually hurt a person physically, they can make that person feel like they are being hurt for real. I believe that many of the reports of paranormal phenomena are actually these inorganic beings interacting either accidentally or purposefully with human beings. As I said, I do not mean to deny the existence of ghosts, for example, but I do believe that some of these ghost reports are actually inorganic beings that witnesses confuse with departed spirits. The interesting thing about these high-level inorganic beings is that given the presence of intense emotional energy, they can take on the form of just about anything that suits their needs. While some Bigfoot reports, for example, might be quite legitimate, other reports could actually be inorganic beings taking on this form in order to create a huge terror response from the human that is witnessing the phenomena. They seem to have the ability to look within the minds of people and create the form of something that the person expects to see. If we expect to see horned demons when we enter a certain place or make our way through a dark forest, then this is what we will see when we run into an inorganic being. If we expect to see a big hairy creature, a wood sprite, or a gray alien, this is what we will see, and they will manipulate our awareness to get as much emotional energy from this encounter as possible. As I said, this does not mean that all sightings of Bigfoot are inorganic beings. What it means is that there is another wrinkle that we must consider whenever we are hunting for the unknown. These inorganic creatures seem to have been around long before we got to this earth, and will most likely be around far longer than us. Some occult practitioners have learned to work with these creatures. Usually ceremonial magic, that depends on calling forth, and trying to find a demon or god to do your bidding, is actually a methodology designed to work with these creatures. I personally do not usually recommend this kind of methodology, because working with such powerful inorganic beings can be a dangerous thing, in the wrong environment. These creatures are older, smarter, and far more patient than any man or woman. Unless it's in the dream condition, where I am bound to run across some of these curious creatures, I would just avoid them if I can help it. There also have been, and there still are, certain groups that worship these creatures. Usually, this type of worship will involve a sacrifice, or some kind of complex, and highly animated ceremony. What is happening here, is that the worshippers are feeding this inorganic being. If it is a sacrifice, then the inorganic creature is feeding from the great amount of adrenal and emotional energy given off by the animal as it dies. This creature is not feeding on the blood is just the symbol of organic life, which the worshippers work with. The inorganic being though is only interested in the bioenergy given off by the dying animal, and the revved up worshippers partaking in the ceremony. In the case of an animated ceremony, the inorganic being is just being fed by the great burst of emotion and energy that the worshippers are able to generate through dancing, or some kind of self-flagellation. Their existence of inorganic creatures is not a secret to some, but modern man, with his rational contemplations, finds the existence of these beings to be utterly impossible. As such, you will be hard-pressed to find information on them anywhere, except perhaps as reference, where they are mislabeled as gods, demigods, cryptids of all kinds, ghosts, poltergeists, demons, etc. I believe that much, not all, of the alien abduction phenomena is a result of these creatures. The best way to identify such a creature, as opposed to perhaps a paranormal encounter of a more solid kind, is to see how much this encounter seems to rely on an emotional response from you. If, for example, you encounter a cryptid that seems to be more interested in terrorizing you, or torturing you in some way, than to just getting the heck out of the way, you are most likely dealing with an inorganic being. If you could manage it, see what happens when you completely turn off all emotional response. An inorganic being without the emotional force that you are emitting would essentially fade away, turn into a vapor-like substance or perhaps even a glowing orb. It's a big wrinkle, I know, with many overlaps into quite legitimate paranormal phenomenon of a different kind. Researching the paranormal is not an easy thing, but anyone trying to understand this field should be aware of these creatures, or else it will be impossible for this person to make any headway, without finding incredible contradictions in their recorded data or experiments. It is also the case that as a private individual, who is witnessing these supernatural events, that you also try to identify these inorganic entities, so that you are able to deal with them in the proper manner. If you are interested in finding out more about inorganic beings, then may I suggest the book, Vampire's Way to Psychic Self-Defense. In it I have given a more detailed description of inorganic beings in general, for example the fact that they come in different shapes and sizes, the fact that while some can actually be intellectually superior to us, there are many that can be quite simplistic and animal-like in nature. I dedicate a chapter to specifically talk about predatory non-organic beings, and how to beat them at their own game. If you are interested, I will leave a link in the description below.